Dead Island 2 is here, and if you're watching this when the game's just released, then you are a beginner, and chances are most of you watching this game are a beginner within Dead Island 2, and this video is going to be a complete beginner's guide to Dead Island 2, so this is definitely the video for you. We'll be going over loads of different tips and tricks that you need to know about throughout your entire playthrough. First of all, we'll focus on tips and tricks that you should know about at the beginning of the game and things that you need to know right at the start, and then we'll look at some more broad tips and tricks of things that you know are good to know and remember throughout your entire playthrough, and we'll be looking at all of those within this video. So let's waste no more time and let's get into this complete beginner's guide to Dead Island 2. So like I just said, we'll start off with things that you should know at the beginning of the game, the starting tips and tricks if that's what you want to call them. So the first thing is to do all of the missions at the start of the game, the beginning missions within the game. Dead Island starts off strong and immediately throws you into action, but giving you the opportunity to see what kind of game it is right away. And now, because Dead Island 2 is a semi-open world game, this means that you'll be guided through the game by following a set path with a little freedom to get to a certain location. Completing missions at the start is definitely highly recommended, and it's definitely something that you should do. Of course, you will be able to explore a certain level when you find yourself in it, but at the very beginning, the exploration will not make sense because most of the passages will be closed anyway, so definitely focus on just completing those missions and try not to get too sidetracked. Of course, explore the area, enjoy the game, of course, and if you want to enjoy the game by exploring loads of things, then by all means do that. Don't just follow that, if it's going to make the game boring for you, then of course don't do that. But I would recommend just focusing on those missions at the start of the game, getting yourself some decent gear, getting up in the levels, and just generally progressing through the game at the beginning. And then once you unlock a bit more, you're further through the game is when you can start to explore areas. And this perfectly leads on to the next point, which is when you should start exploring, and that is that you should only explore after you unlock the fast travel maps. Dead Island 2 does have a fast travel system, but it is rather strange that you have to visit at least 5 regions before it does become available to you. Fast travel will allow you to get easily from the vendors to the locked passages, because some areas are only accessible after you purchase specific parts from vendors, such as breakers or some other electronic parts. Otherwise, you'll have to walk very long distances, which is not recommended in a full world of, zombies. So these 2 points mix together perfectly. Don't explore at the start of the game, and start exploring once you unlock those fast travel maps, allowing you to get from point A to point B easily without any issues. You're not having to spend loads and loads of time getting there, since you are just able to fast travel, and that's going to make it, if you're on next gen console, it's actually just going to take a second to get from point A to point B. So definitely make sure that you only really start exploring once you do have those fast travel maps all unlocked, which is going to be once you visit at least 5 regions within the game. That is when the fast travel maps will become available to you. So next on is that the keys and codes are usually randomized. When you discover a locked safe, a locked storage room, or any other locked location containing valuable items, the key or codes to get into this area is usually nearby, guarded by a zombie no less. If you don't know which zombie is guarding the key, you might as well look online for a guide to tell you where to find it. That's probably an easy way to get around that. But in most cases, it will be randomized, so you will have to kill quite a few zombies to find out which one of them is holding it. Something worth noting there, that you might have to spend a bit of time. There is no easy answer to finding these keys and codes to be able to get into any sort of area. Just anything that's locked, really, it is going to take a bit of time to be able to find those. It's not an easy process, and Deep Silver have made that clear, that this won't be that easy, and it is going to take a bit of time. So, try not to waste loads of time looking for it, since eventually you will come across it. Maybe that's later in the game, but yeah, it is just something worth noting. So next up is to stick to the weapon of your choice and repair it often. Like in many other games of this type, melee weapons are core to Dead Island 2's gameplay mechanics. Once you've found the right sword, club, or axe for you, you'll want to stick with it and use it for, well, as long as you can. The issue is that melee weapons degrade in Dead Island 2, and once their durability is reduced to 0, they can no longer be used, at least not until they are repaired. So take advantage of every opportunity to visit the workbench, and for a small fee, improve your arsenal. The right weapons can really mean the difference between life and death in Dead Island 2. So there is a weapon degradation system within Dead Island 2, so your weapons will slowly degrade over time, so it's worth noting that obviously you will have to repair those, and eventually they will just break and they will need repairing, so bear that in mind. But generally you can't lose weapons within the game. You'll always have hold of weapons for, well, throughout your entire playthrough. But it is worth noting that, once you find a weapon that you like, it's powerful enough and it works well, and it's typically going to be a melee weapon, then it is just worth sticking with that. And if you like it, then there's no issues. Of course, if you get bored of it, then obviously switch things up. But generally speaking, throughout your entire playthrough, you can stick with the one weapon, you can upgrade that weapon, and you can obviously, repair that weapon when that is needed. It is worth noting, of course, that melee weapons are the more powerful weapons within Dead Island 2. The developers have said that, firearms are there for those that really want to use them, but melee weapons are what this game was designed for, and melee weapons are the better option. But of course, if you want to use firearms, then by all means go for it. It's just going to be a bit more of a challenge. challenge, but yeah, the melee weapons simply are the more powerful weapons within the game, so it's more, going to be more beneficial for you to use those ones. But now let's actually move on to another tip regarding weapons, which is to use different weapons on different zombies. You'll be able to add some perks to your weapons to make them stronger and do some elemental damage such as fire, electricity, and poison. Some zombies will also have such powers, so if you encounter, for example, a zombie that was a firefighter earlier, do not use the weapon with fire perks. You'll be completely immune to your attacks. It's something worth noting there that certain zombies will be immune to certain things, so simply choose another weapon with another perk and he will be down in no time. Something really worth noting there, that you can't just use the same weapon, for every single zombie within the game. You are going to have to switch things up, and you are going to have to, think quite strategically about this, since it's not going to be an easy process killing all of these zombies in a herd. Some of them are going to be different to others. You might have to actually quickly switch between weapons to be able to stay alive, something worth noting, so make sure that you have quite a few weapons for different scenarios, since, yeah, certain weapons with certain perks won't be able to kill certain zombies, with that example of the firefighter. Definitely something worth noting. So next we're going to talk about difficulty within Dead Island 2. Now there are no difficulty levels within this game, so those that are not up for a rough action RPG, you might want to step back from this game. There are things that, can help you ease through the game with the online co-op. Obviously that's going to help. If you're able to get someone that's, they're stronger at the game, they know the mechanics of the game, they'll be able to help you and they'll be able to get you through the game. But there is no difficulty selection. There's no easy, medium, or hard difficulty. It's all just the same difficulty. So if you tend to find games more challenging, then maybe this won't be the game for you, unless you are able to get a friend to help you through the game using the online co-op system, which we'll talk about now. So you can generally get together with 2 online friends. You can have up to 3 people within one lobby. The more players that join the crew, the better. And also the checkpointing system is pretty fair in that you won't lose much progress from where you fall. Money and experience points won't be lost either. So something worth noting there, that if players do die, then it shouldn't really be much of an issue, since, yeah, the checkpointing system is pretty useful. So yeah, the main thing worth noting there is that, if you do struggle at games, then it is worth noting there is no difficulty selection for this game. There's no real way to make the game significantly easier, unless of course you do find someone to help you. So next up we'll talk about modding and skills. Like the previous Dead Island games, a big mechanic of the sequel allows you to mod weapons. You can attach electricity or burning elements to things like axes or swords. These elements will leave effects on zombies, as well as increase the threshold of damage the weapon does overall. Skill cards will unlock as the story progresses, and also you will level up. For both mods and skill cards, it's best to experiment with them all, to be honest, and see which fits best with your playstyle. It's worth noting that certain mechanics like dodging and blocking cannot be used at the same time. You have to select either one of those, which is an example, but there's loads of other circumstances with that too. So, it's really worth going through all of these as you unlock them, as you progress through the game, and just trying out all of them and finding what works best for your playstyle. That way, you'll be able to find the easiest way for you specifically to be able to take out zombies. There's no real best loadout, since it really depends on the way that you play the game. So next up is to always buy fuses. Fuses act like the golden keys in the world of Dead Island 2. Nearly every house and building will have one fuse box open. Placing a fuse will unlock a secret area stuffed with gear and materials that are rare for an action RPG. Now vendors such as Carlos, who lives in Emma's house, will sell them. His stock is not infinite, but it will replenish over time, something worth noting there. The same is true for other vendors in the game. So when fuses are available, max out the inventory, because the investment will definitely be worth it. You don't want to find a fuse box and then just not be able to utilize it. You really want to make sure that you are stocked up on these and have as many as you possibly can at one time. So next up is to beware of skulls. Certain enemy zombies will have a skull next to their health bars instead of levels. This will usually indicate that the player is in the wrong area at the wrong time. It's a way to signify extreme level differences between enemies and you. So it's okay to run in these circumstances, and generally that is going to be a good rule of thumb overall. This does mean that they're going to be deadly, and it's going to be pretty impossible to take them out. So, definitely something worth keeping in mind. Even if zombies are within your level, the overwhelming amount of them can be too much. So, make sure that you use the open world gameplay and definitely run away when it is needed to be able to survive. But at the same time, if you do die, the checkpoint system is pretty good, so you shouldn't run into too many issues, to be honest. So next up is to utilize the environment. Now, like we mentioned earlier, weapons will break, and these weapons don't break as easily as the ones in Legend of Zelda or anything like that, but you definitely need to stock up on them, and thankfully there are other ways to take down enemies via the environment. For example, if there is a loose electrical wire, you can apply water to that area and the electricity will spread, and this will get loads of zombies with water and will also make them more vulnerable. So be sure to experiment with your environment and just see if there's any other ways to take out enemies without using up all of the durability on your weapon. So next up, we sort of mentioned this earlier, but take advantage of fast travel. Fast travel isn't for everyone in games, I know that. Obviously, some people really want to take in the world around them and, you know, get what they paid for, which I completely understand, and I like to do that sometimes as well. However, much like the first point that we mentioned, there are a lot of zombies within Dead Island 2, and you don't really need to kill all of them. So once you do unlock fast travel, it is a great way to preserve your weapons and ammo for when you really do need it, and it's just, you know, going to make things much more efficient. For those that want to use it, of course, you don't always have to. Which does bring us on to the next point, that you don't have to kill everything. It's going to degrade your weapons easily, and it's going to be a waste of time. Killing everything between you and where you're going is just going to destroy your equipment. Now, you can repair weapons, but this does cost money, so it would just make sense to make sure that you do avoid killing some zombies in certain situations. So the second to last tip is that the military supply crates do refill. In Dead Island 2, you will come across military supply crates sprinkled throughout the world. These boxes contain really good weapons that will most likely go straight into your loadout. One thing that's handy to know is these boxes will actually refill over time, so it's always worth popping back once you're a high level and taking a look. It will also save you some money with upgrading your weapons, something definitely worth utilizing. So now we're onto the final tip, which is a basic one but definitely a useful one, which is to keep space in your loadout. We always run into the problem in any game like this where we always run out of space in our loadouts. We find some new gear that we really want, but there's no space in our loadout to be able to store it. Never completely fill up your loadout, because you'll certainly find some great weapons and it's just going to happen. Even if your weapon breaks, you're still going to keep hold of it and it's still going to take up space within your loadout. So if you don't want to have the conundrum of which weapon to drop halfway through a quest, keep a few spots free. It's just going to make things a lot easier and definitely save some time as well. So there we go. That was a complete beginner's guide to Dead Island 2, going over all the tips and tricks that you need to know as a beginner within Dead Island 2 and how to get yourself through the intro of the game. That's everything that you need to know, and to be honest, all of those tips will get you through the entire game as well. So by watching this video, you are set and you'll easily be able to get through Dead Island 2 without any issues. So yeah, that does just about wrap up things here. Now, I have actually done a video which is a complete survival guide to Dead Island 2, going over what you need to know to be able to survive the zombies within Dead Island 2. A link to that video is on the screen now if you are interested in watching it.